Welcome to episode 52 of our Dad series. It's the final episode, and I interview Classical Conversations father, Alex. He runs a Bitcoin mining repair shop, and he's trying to do it the right way. And of course, we have our classical crypto segment on our show because we want you to learn and educate yourself. And this is a 30-minute education on Bitcoin mining and some of the nuances behind what's going on the scenes in the industry. And of course, we hear about his love for his children and family and what it's like launching a new business while homeschooling. So let's jump in.
Classical Conversation Studios presents Refining Rhetoric with CEO Robert Bortons, a podcast where faith, business, politics, and classical education meet. Join us as we use the classical tools of rhetoric to seek truth in every arena of life.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Refining Rhetoric. Today, my guest is Alex Hayes. Alex is a graduate of the United States Merchant Marine Academy, a professional sailor for 12 years, and the founder and CEO of the company Orion Taurus, an organization that specializes in repair of ASIC machines and GPUs for Bitcoin miners in South Florida. Alex and his wife Jen also homeschool their 5 children with Classical Conversations. Alex, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Robert.
Of course, we have on our show the classical crypto segment, so we've been whetting our listeners' appetite. But today I want to talk about Bitcoin mining, how your company, Orion Taurus, what they do in this space, and understand how did you get from merchant marines to Bitcoin. And tell us first, though, really, how did you get into sailing and your pre-Bitcoin life?
So pre-Bitcoin life, I'm a third generation Merchant Marine Academy graduate. So my grandfather graduated in 45, father graduated in 73, I graduated in 08. So it was maybe not told to go there, but we kind of fell in. It was a good, easy path for me to go into. Not that it was easy, but it was the logical path for us to try. And that's where we, Jen and I both were Merchant Marine Academy graduates, both, and that's where I met my wife. So we're very blessed that we were able to attend such a great place and it's a great place to be from. Very hard to be at, but from there, the career, that's what Merchant Marine Academy does. It teaches you how to, they educate you how to be a merchant mariner, and so we followed that logical career path. Went to sea 12 years. We worked at it with an oil tanking company, the same one. Went up the ranks from third officer all the way up to captain. After a couple trips as captain, we decided that maybe it was time to try something different, and so then we looked around. We did some research, started educating myself into business, and we found Bitcoin mining because at the time this was Q3 of 2020. So this was before the bull run, the latest bull run. It was the best place to put your money. You put your money, you put X amount of dollars in, the machine will give you X amount of dollars back out. And it typically was a much higher percentage return on your investment than you would, say, if I invested the same amount of dollars into real estate. So we decided to give it a shot. So we took a fairly sizable risk. I don't advise most people to do what we did, for sure, but it was God was calling us onto a different path from going to sea, and so we used our skill set of project management and just technical knowledge and maintenance and routines, and we kind of moved into a new industry that we thought we were buying a magic money box at the beginning, but it turned into so much more, right? So as the longer we were in it, the more we became educated. We found that we were studying business, we were studying economics, we were studying macroeconomics, microeconomics, tokenomics. We were studying technology. We were studying, and then obviously Bitcoin and the rest of cryptocurrency market. So it was a lot of there's a lot of education that's gone through in a very, very short amount of time in my life. Probably the most amount of education I've ever had in such a short amount of time. But it's been an exciting ride. And as we transitioned in our knowledge base from being totally novice into now, I would consider us probably um, more aware than most. I hesitate before I say the word expert, but but we're definitely a very knowledgeable crew at this point.
Just for the sake of the SEC, Alex and Hayes and I, Robert Bortons, are not financial experts. We are not advisors. Take none of this as financial advice. This is one guy's story into Bitcoining. And I will say, if you started in Q3 of 2020, I bet that was a very magical money box at that time.
It was indeed. It was indeed. And actually, at the time we started
Not
with,
so much today, maybe, but
at the time we started really with Ethereum mining and on the ASIC side, and that was very profitable for a very short window. but uh, but anyways, the farther we went down, we realized how mining economics work, and that it's an arms race to say the least. Where you keep adding machines, you have to keep reinvesting in machines to be able to up your hash rate to be competitive on the network. And there's a whole lot of other things that go into it as well, like price, actual market price versus hash rate price versus how your power price. So there's a lot of dynamic factors that go into your what you would call your bottom line profitability. And with all the money pouring in on the mining side, we were thinking to ourselves, well, we don't have the deep pockets to compete on a huge level with Bitcoin mining, but we wanted to maintain our place in this industry. And so we decided to make a strategic shift in our business model from being a miner to being a support vendor. And that's when we decided to make the switch into being a ASIC repair center, or that would be the main part of the industry that we wanted to plant our Orion Taurus flag. And because it was something that we were familiar with maintenance and routines.
now you're singing sweet melodies to me, Alex, but maybe our listeners need a little bit of grammar to help them. So we've been introduced them. If they've been listening to the show, they know about Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. But can you just explain a little bit more about what the ASIC machines and GPUs are, and then what do you mean mining? Are you like, this isn't like cobalt mining or coal mining? Can you just give us a little bit of detail on what those terms mean?
Sure. So the hash rate, you have to talk about hash rate to understand GPU versus ASIC mining, right? And mining in general. And so you hear somebody in the crypto space or Bitcoin space talk about mining, they're talking about essentially data processing. That's all it is. This is a data center operation. Much you can think of it just like Amazon Web Services or Azure from Google. Like this is data processing, and it's just the type of data packets that's being sent from point A to point B. Depends on the network and what network you're supporting and helping to propagate. So when you're talking Bitcoin mining, you're actually simply processing transactions or processing the data over the Bitcoin network. You're supporting it fundamentally. That's how it's supposed to work. And practically speaking, it goes over a computer, right? So the ASIC is just a type of computer. And the ASIC is an application specific integrated circuit. So it's a type of chip that's used in the server, in the computer server, that is dedicated and can only do Bitcoin mining. So when we're looking at these servers, they're essentially very dumb machines. They can only do one thing, and that's where you get the application specific terminology.
But they do that one thing really, really well.
They only do that one thing really, really well. Whereas on your CPU, on your computer, is designed for multitasking. That's why you can have multiple windows open on your computer, right? You have different browsers open, different tabs open, different software programs open at the same time, because your CPU in your computer or your laptop is designed for multitasking. Well, the chip that's the type of chip that's on a Bitcoin server can only do one thing. So the people that designed this chip took all the other functionality out of that microchip, right? Out of that semiconductor microchip. They took everything else out, and they only wanted to do one thing, because that's how you get the most efficiency out of your unit, out of your chip, is if it's only focusing to do all of its energy on that one
Mm.
thing. So that's why when you say ASIC, it's a generic term in the industry that refers to the entire server, but the ASIC itself is actually a chip. It's it's a circuit. It's the
So you
one chip.
went from mining Bitcoin to now setting up other people's mining operations, repairing miners, helping them really do better at that part that's more capital intensive, and you can come in with your expertise. Is that
So
is that the pivot you made?
So we made again, as more education over the longer you're in the game, the more education you acquire, the more valuable you are to the marketplace. And so what I realized as the farther we went down into this, we'll call it again ASIC repair world, or the computer repair world here for Bitcoin, it everybody is doing repairs like somebody in a garage, right? Because
Right,
that's the type of people that are still in the industry. They only know how to do this on a garage level basis, but they're trying to scale we'll call them garage tactics, right? So they're using very cheap equipment. They have very limited knowledge base. So some of them are good, right? They're competent, but it's difficult to produce a consistent result like somebody in a big business industry would expect, right? So
right.
if you have Amazon Web Services is not going to use anybody in the Bitcoin repair ASIC repair world to do any of their server repairs, because the type of repairs that they're doing has is or the way they're doing repairs is nothing close to what the PCB, printed circuit board, repair rework industry standards say they should be. And
Okay,
I'm seeing this as my opportunity, because I have partnered, or I've teamed up with an IPC certification center, and that they teach this industry standards for printed circuit board repair and rework. So over the last couple of months, one we've moved location to North Orlando, and
okay,
my warehouse is now inside of the certification center. So
okay.
we're literally as close to the knowledge as we can get to do this correctly. And our systems that we're creating and generating are the most stringent, because we actually do something called quality assurance. So we
Mm.
have adopted best practice for printed circuit board repair and rework. And so why are people going to come to us? Because we're doing it at such a high level that nobody else is doing it the same. Like it's apples and oranges compared to what everybody else is doing. But it took 2 years of educating ourselves into how do we do this at a level that makes sense, right? Because the industry right now is growing from from hobbyists to
Mhm.
industry. So we want to be here to help industry grow and mature and professionalize. Our mission is to help professionalize the Bitcoin and crypto mining industry one hashboard at a time. Like, it's very simple. That's what we're doing. So, can that's our focus has been very clear and very and laser like. And we just hired I got 5 people now full time on staff that
Wow.
we're building. Yeah, so I'm super excited and super pumped about where we're at, and we got our systems are, I I believe, to be the best in the business. So I mean, we're really doing well from a technical standpoint at this point. So very happy.
So how's it been like homeschooling and really launching a business and pivoting a business? Have you been able to incorporate your children into this experience, and do they roll their eyes when they hear about ASICs and Bitcoin and all the mining, or are they like super are they into it
No,
too?
yeah. So my kids, yeah, they'll yeah, they know what Bitcoin is. They know what US dollars mean. They know what purchasing power means. They know a lot of different things that probably most kids their age don't. But it's been there's challenges, right? Like because right now we're still technically a small business, and like many
Yeah.
other small business owners, the family gets overlapped. Family time and business time kind of get blended together at certain points because it's just the necessity of running a business. So, but I think exposing him to how hard we work, the type of work we're doing, like we're having sales conversations, we're talking about why things cost, how much they do. Like they're being exposed to a lot of different things that I'm very, very grateful that they're being exposed to at this young age because the education system, traditional education system, as I'm going to start preaching to the choir here, knows that they don't teach this stuff. Like they don't teach
No.
you how to handle yourself in a financial situation. They don't teach you about business. They don't. Even people who go to business school don't know how to run a business. It takes practical experience to run businesses. And I'm learning this more and more the longer that I'm in business for myself. So I'm very grateful to see the growth in my kids, but it doesn't come without its challenges for sure. And my wife should get Jen should get all the credit because she works full time in the business and overlaps with the kids' education and takes care of them on a practical level, with different activities like, she incorporates going to the museums and going to zoos
Hmm.
and like all this other extracurricular education time on top of doing the basics through classical conversation. So it's quite impressive what my wife is able to do in such a short
Yeah.
amount of time.
Well, I'm always impressed by the quality of people that choose a classical conversations education for their family. And I just appreciate you being on to tell your story today about starting a business. And really, I would like to pivot to talking a little bit more about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, you message Ethereum, to talk a little about that. So, one of the things we hear about is Bitcoin as digital gold. And do you agree with that? Why do people say that? And what does it practically mean for, a single income family who, I can't afford one Bitcoin, like right now it's trading just under 30,000. And of course that fluctuates often. Um, yeah. So what is that? What is Bitcoin? Why is it called digital gold?
So I think that the real conversation is going to be how hard it is to actually get into Bitcoin because you can't. The regulation environment right now that we have is basically trying to. It's on an active warpath to close down all the on ramps and off ramps. So for most people to be able to have access to Bitcoin, I think in the United States, I think that window is starting to get closed, and I think this is on purpose, right? Like they don't the Bitcoin in particular, we'll say, is separate from crypto because there's Bitcoin and then there's kind of everything else falls into different categories. So I more or less kind of agree with what the SEC is saying that yeah, these things are all unregistered securities because most of them probably are with the way that they're presented, being that they're investment vehicles that people are expecting a return on their money. So they're looking at the Howey test, which is the since the 1930s, this is what people have been used as a standard for what classifies as a security. Now, whether or not you agree that the government should be allowed to tell people where they can invest and where they can't invest, that is kind of, to me, it's a it's a moot
Separate
point.
issue.
It's a separate issue entirely. The fact is that the law is the law of the land, and you can't get around it because you think you have something new that doesn't fall into this because it clearly does. Bitcoin mining is very different because it's because it acts more as a commodity than it does as a security because it's not there's no centralized authority that's saying this is an investment asset that you need to put your money into because we're going to do something with this capital and it's going to create this. It's just Bitcoin mining is a fixed protocol. So I do believe that Bitcoin is more of a gray area because of how it's done and
And
same with so the similar argument can be made with other proof of work networks. But
yeah, and I want to talk
Ethereum,
about proof of work real fast. because that's one of the criticism of Bitcoin is it uses up all this energy. But I also think proof of work, they just hate work in general, and so they definitely hate proof of it. So can you address the energy concerns that people have? Is Bitcoin really an energy drain?
I think that it does require a massive amount of energy. The issue is not does it require energy. The issue is can the government say what is an acceptable use of that energy consumption and what is not. Like what is the government going to start telling you what's acceptable and what's not acceptable? Like this idea is okay, but this one is not okay. Now the government is basically being the gatekeeper to what you can use energy on, and any enterprise that you do, or just to have be able to live your daily life, is going to require you to expel energy, to consume energy. So I think that's a dangerous precedent to start setting when the government can tell industry what's acceptable uses of energy and what's not. That's unprecedented. Like they, but this is the power that they would like to yield or wield as we go forward, and I think that's dangerous. That's a dangerous concept. But it is energy is Bitcoin mining energy
It uses
intensive?
energy.
Yes. It uses a massive amount of energy. Not just a little bit. It uses a lot. Like when they say it uses a lot of energy, they're not lying. It uses a lot of
Yeah.
energy. But a lot of the energy that they're trying to find is stranded or unused energy potential. So power plants, and so this is another thing you have to learn when you're in the business is how energy works. So you talk
Yeah.
about all the different things you have to learn. I didn't even mention energy and energy markets or energy power plants and all this stuff. But power plants typically will not produce, or they're not going to produce maximum amount of potential, and the reason is because there's no demand. So they have to have a consumer. There has to be a consuming entity or consuming body for them to produce the energy. But when there's not enough consumers to consume the energy required to basically keep a power plant online, it's not good for the power plant to fluctuate, because
Right.
it should be either on or it should be off. And so when it's on, it's going to produce excess energy. And that's not good either, because it's just waste, right? There's no value being consumed. There's no value being produced for that
But we
extra.
don't want rolling brownouts, so we produce more than we need in order
Yeah.
to maintain
So
an energy.
so this is what's going on right now in Texas, in particular, when they talk about curtailment. So they are basically saying we will be the consistent load demand for your power plant, and when you need us to shut down because the grid, being the community, needs more power because of XYZ, well, you can shut us off, and then you can just circle that back into the grid and be able to cover your demand, right? So it's demand response, curtailment. There's a couple different
So it's
terminology.
spurning innovation. It's not just, I mean, if I'm a Bitcoin miner, I want my energy prices as low as possible so my profit can be high as possible. So I'm going to try to innovate in the area of energy cost.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of people are going to right now, and there's good arguments to be made that it supports the grid, it supports energy efficient energy consumption, because everything gets to basically work as intended. You don't have to throttle down an engine. The power plant can be at peak performance all the time, and because it's at one steady load, that's where power plants usually want to be, is at a steady load. So when you start moving things up and down, it's harder on the equipment, more maintenance costs.
Well, thank you for that. That's super helpful and understanding when we hear things on the news, like what's actually going on behind the scenes. What would you say to people who say, "I'm interested in Bitcoin, but isn't my money safer in the bank? I can trust the U.S. dollar. Can I trust Bitcoin?" So tell us a little bit about your thoughts on fiat currency versus the Bitcoin network.
Okay. So here's we're going to reiterate the fact that I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a financial planner. I have no credentials whatsoever to give people financial advice. That being said, I think that, for me personally, what I'm looking out for is is my money liquid? Do I have access to my money when I need it? And I think that in the very near future, it's not out of the possibility for the banks to start freezing people's money, because what's happening right now in the financial markets is that people are leaving banks. They're taking money out of the banks, out of their checking and savings account. They're putting it into something like a money market account, or they're buying another asset that's outside of the bank. And when they're doing that because the bank is giving them nothing for their money, 0.01% on a checking account at Chase,
Right.
but they can get 3 or 4% if they put it into a money market account. So the smart people are saying, hey, that makes sense. Why do I even have a checking account? Well, the problem is that our entire financial structure is built on most people leaving their money parked in the bank, getting nothing, and the bank making 10x, 10 times what it is what you have in the bank. So they're loaning our money and they're making the profit, and they're the ones that are getting all the reward, but they're doing it
Right.
using our money. So that's how banking works, and that's how it has worked for the last 100 years. So that nobody thought we would have to a point where interest rates would be where they're at, that economic activity is slowing down, and nobody thought that people would not consider U.S. banks stable. So, and the banks are failing right now, not because they're failing because they have too many bad assets on the books that they have to hold to maturity, and like bonds. So they bought a lot of these long note bonds from the government when the interest rate was zero, and they
Right.
were basically having this pristine collateral. But at the time, that was a very strong move because it was the most pristine collateral you could have. It was the most safe, right? They were safe with the people's money because they put it and they parked it into something that was going to have value no matter what. But nobody thought that the Fed was going to raise interest rates 5% over 12 months. That was unprecedented. So what happened is those bonds that they have hold to maturity are now worthless because nobody wants them anymore. So that's why on the books they're bankrupt and they have no money. But they don't. But then people wanted to take their cash out, and they don't have the cash on hand to give
So
all
they
the.
have to sell these worthless bonds, but no
Yes,
one's there to buy the bonds, so you can't.
yes. Everything is a house of cards, and everything seems to start crumbling down. But the answer is going to be, they only have so many cards left to play, and one of the big cards that they have left to play is starting to freeze accounts, freeze money's account. You cannot use this money, you cannot move this money, you cannot withdraw this money. They're going to start making it harder for normal people to have access to their cash, and they're going to start putting up more roadblocks because, and we saw this, back, if people remember, back in 2008, what did Greece do when they had the
Yep.
the the big debt
They shut
crisis
the
over
banks
in.
down for weeks,
Yeah,
and
they
then you
shut
can
the
only
banks
get
down.
out a certain amount.
Exactly, exactly. They can only take out certain amounts. They can only do this. Like, this is the playbook,
It's not
right?
unprecedented.
That part is not unprecedented. What is unprecedented is having it here in the States. Like,
Sure.
like that part is would be very, very shaky, because I mean nobody in our generation, or nobody's alive that remembers the Great Depression anymore. Like, I don't know how many people are left from the Great Depression, but my
Right.
grandmother's one of them, but she's in her 90s right now. But that's the last generation that remembers such hard economic times. So it's hard for people that have never experienced something to realize what's possible, because in our lifetime we've never seen it. Like, I'm 36, so in our lifetime, basically we've not known a period in economic history where interest rates didn't go down, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we've never seen, this is the first time really that we've ever seen interest rates start to go up and stay up. So for us, this is unprecedented because we haven't experienced it, but this is really just repeating history. And people that are older and are students of history can really see what's coming. And that's why I'm saying I think the next step for them is to start freezing accounts. Now, if you don't have very much money in the bank account, you should, then don't do anything with it. Leave it where it's at. You have to play by by the
You got
rules of
bills
the
to
land.
play. You got to buy gas. You got to buy groceries. You
Yeah,
got to pay
you're
your
not going to
mortgage
be.
or your rent.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
churn.
There's some churn that you need to have, and it has to stay in the system to be able to use it. The problem with Bitcoin investing is that it's not liquid. Some people will try to tell you it's liquid, but it's not. It's hard to spend Bitcoin. So even now, that's how it is right now. Can things change, and can they change fast? Absolutely. If all of a
And
sudden
that's what
everybody,
Bitcoiners might be, we'll say, gambling on.
yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Betting on is that
Yeah,
will.
it's going to change. But up to this point, it hasn't. so it's so you should only look at a very small portion of your investment if you're going to look at Bitcoin investing. Um, you what the way I look at it is it's a hedge against U.S. banks. Now,
One of the things that I've heard people say is, 1 or 2%. But again, those are other people's words, not mine. But does Bitcoin have the possibility of becoming something more? Like, is it really just digital ones and zeros, or can real applications be built on it?
so now you're talking. Now you're
Like, can
broaching a
it become
subject.
liquid?
Well, I think the question is deeper than that. So your question is actually more political than anything else, because
Okay.
in the Bitcoin world, there's different political factions, right? You can't go anywhere without politics. So in Bitcoin, you have the main Bitcoin protocols. You have BTC, which is Bitcoin Core. You have BCH, Bitcoin Cash, and you have BSV, which is Bitcoin Satoshi's Vision. And out of those, there's different ideologies that come up, and they all use SHA-256. They're all technically Bitcoin. It's just the ticker, right, is different.
Mhm.
But they all use the base layer protocol of SHA-256 algorithm. And if you any of the Bitcoin servers that you purchase, you can mine or support data processing for any of those three. And the BTC crowd, that's where you hear the digital gold narrative. That's where you also hear Lightning Network being propagated as a solution, layer two solution, and that's where you hear it more as an investment strategy for financial gain. So that kind of teeters on the edge of is it a security or not? When you start saying things like put your money here because you're going to get return on your money, and this is an
Right.
investment asset, like that's where it starts getting a little questionable. And there's some interesting opinion articles about that I can share with you after. But um, but the BSV crowd on the other side is, we'll say that's the left. That's the left side. The right side would be BSV. BSV's Bitcoin Satoshi Vision is more enterprise. So these guys have basically taken the block size limit off, and uh, they are looking at it more as a technology for development, for business
Okay.
enterprise development using blockchain. So blockchain is the type of technology they're using. Bitcoin is the specific application of Bitcoin that they're utilizing to use blockchain and distributed ledger technology in enterprise solutions. So this is where you kind of have to educate yourself as the entire camp. I have friends and good colleagues over here on BTC side that
Mhm.
are, they're very, very much believers in what this is trying to do. Data, and I think the data sovereignty, or the individual sovereignty, is kind of actually a mutual aspect that they both share. Everybody likes data sovereignty, individual sovereignty, and like the basically self custody, like this. There's a lot of similarities, but where they differ is the BTC crowd, they have smaller block size limits, so there's not as much data can be transmitted over the network. But they do that. They say they do that for a reason, in order to keep its integrity. And can this work? I think it can. Like, there's no human psychology says that if you have enough people believe in something, it can work, and
Yeah.
it can be adopted. So can
Right.
it?
It's the network effect. The more
It,
people that buy into Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or
exactly.
Ethereum or any of these is the potential for it to actually become mainstream increases dramatically, and obviously increases and decreases in value drive
Yeah.
narratives
Yeah.
and excitement and depression and all the things in between.
Exactly. And where we want, from our perspective as an infrastructure service provider, I don't I don't I'm not going to sit here and say these people are better than these people. But I like what
Whichever
I
one pays you is the
at the end
best.
of the day, I'm agnostic in my approach because business is business, but I do like aspects of both. But I also I get really excited about what BSV can do because of its enterprise capacity and how it can affect a lot more of business and business development, which is exciting. Like it because now Bitcoin to me, when my first love of Bitcoin was Bitcoin as a technology, and I love to see people build real platforms and meaningful business development on top of Bitcoin, using Bitcoin. And but I'm not here to say that BTC can't work as digital gold, or it can't work as Lightning Network's not going to work. I'm not technical enough on that side of things to be able to lay judgment, but um, but I like these people too. So at the end of the day, we're here to support Bitcoin, and but I think everybody should take some time too and do investigation for themselves and to see the differences. If you're going to be in crypto and Bitcoin in particular, you should educate yourself to a point where you fully understand what it is that you're putting your money into, your hard-earned money, right? Don't just take some YouTuber's word on this is where you need to put your money because you're going to make 10x. It's like, well, know what it is that you're doing and know why you're doing it is very important.
Absolutely. Now, I'd like to just talk a little bit about yourself and running a business, homeschooling your kids. Probably not a lot of time to do other things, but is there any books you're reading now, or anything that you've stumbled across through growing your business that's really impacted the way you view your company and supporting that growth?
Absolutely. I can give you a whole list of books that I've been reading, but the biggest one that I give out to all my employees is Crucial Conversations. That
Yep.
book, that's a great book. Um, Being able to have meaningful dialogue with hard conversations and hard topics, especially accountability, that's crucial in any business, no matter if you're a small business or big business. So that's one of my big ones. Another book that I'm reading it again is 33 Strategies of War. That's a great book.
Okay.
Robert Greene. People love him or hate him. He wrote 48 Laws of Power, questionable, but
Okay.
so, but
I've
I've
read
read,
48 Laws of Power. Again, it's an interesting read. I don't know
it's
that
an
it
interesting
quite
read.
aligns with Christianity, but it might align with how the how how the
Yeah.
world,
Well,
the sinful world works.
he doesn't call it the 48 laws of morality. He calls it the 48
No.
laws of power. So I think he was very strategic in and how he titled his book. I don't think he's saying that any of this stuff is moral, but
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, it is interesting to understand. Um, you know, it's interesting from from a strategy perspective. But another one for business is Ready, Fire, Aim by Mike Masterson. That was a great book. Um, I mean, I can go on. Toyota Way for operations
Yep.
guys. That's a great book. Uh, I mean, there's we're always reading. I've always got
Yeah.
something, always got Audible playing in the background, always listening to and from. We try not to waste any time. And of course, we're always, finding time for a devotional. You can't go wrong every day. You got to have your word, get the word of God in you. So
Amen.
that's always first.
Great. Just to close out, tell us a little bit about Jen and your family, and just the dynamics of homeschooling.
So homeschooling is incredibly challenging. It's the most challenging thing you'll probably ever do, but it is also probably the most rewarding thing that you can ever do. And nothing of great value comes without great sacrifice for sure. So it's been a real joy and a real privilege to be able to see the maturity of our kids as they grow from infancy, and then just my son's going to be turning 8 at the end of the month. And just seeing his growth as a person, and knowing that in heaven there's not going to be any parents and children, right? We're all going to be equals under the sight of God. So just knowing that the responsibility of having to raise kids even now in today's day and age, uh, to a point where there are peers under in the sight of God, that's just one of the big things, and that we try to keep in mind as we move forward. And every day is challenging. Not, for sure. We're not going to say it's all sunshine and roses, but it's it's definitely worth it.
Amen to that. And I love how you put that of we're raising our peers. We'll all be equal in front of God's eyes. And I love that long-term mentality. So Alex, thanks for going on the show today, telling us a little bit more about Bitcoin mining and energy consumption, and you're really giving us a deep dive into what's going on behind the scenes. If people are interested in learning more about you or Orion and Taurus, your company, what are some websites or ways to connect with you all?
So our website's oriontaurus.io. No spaces, no periods, just one big word. And but we're on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is probably the best place to get a hold of me personally, Alex Hayes. We have a company page there, Orion Taurus, and Jen's on LinkedIn as well, Jen Hayes. So I mean, we have Twitter, Facebook, but best place is LinkedIn, but website for sure. And
All right.
if anybody wants to come to Sanford, we're happy to show people around.
Awesome. All right. Well, oriontaurus.io. That's ORIONTAURUS.io to find out more about Bitcoin mining. And Alex, you can connect with him on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for being on the show today, and we'll see you soon. Companies all over the US and the world are asking their employees to come back into the office. Google is cracking down on hybrid work and asks workers who are remote to reconsider. And here at Classical Conversations, of course, we have people that work in office, but most of our employees actually work from home. We've been a work from home company almost since the beginning. And so I would say that there are a lot of ways that people can do hybrid work and work from home and do it successfully, because we've proven for 25 years that that's possible. Google's chief people officer, Fiona Sisoni, said, "Of course, not everyone believes in magic hallway conversations, but there's no question that working together in the same room makes a positive difference." And I don't necessarily disagree with that specific statement, but we at Classical Conversations have found that when we align ourselves to higher principles and find people that are aligned with those principles with us, that they do not need the oversight that someone would need at maybe a Google or a place where a person isn't as committed to the mission and the future of that organization and support of that organization's customers. So, know the appropriate word. So, work from home, hybrid, in person. So, work from home means you're primarily or working from home, that you're not really expected to go into the office on a regular basis. A hybrid program, which some of our local people do, is they'll be in the office 2 or 3 days a week and working from home 2 or 3 days a week, and having that hybrid look where you're not in the office every day, but you do have a regular schedule. And then, of course, we all remember pre-COVID how everyone just came to the office every day, and that's what was expected to you. Of course, there used to not be the tools such as Slack or Teams or these different conversation tools that businesses have available to themselves now, 10 or 20 years ago, that have really made it easier to work from home. And of course, things like video conferencing as well. So compare Google work environment where they're saying, hey, we need you to come into the office versus a classical conversations uh, work environment where we're saying, here are these bigger ideas. We need you to accomplish that. For some of you, it means that we need you in the office on a regular basis, and some of you don't. And then think about also the style that this says, when a company says this is how you must perform your work and where you must perform it, it gives a different opinion about that company's opinion of the people they've hired versus classical conversations where we do our best, not perfect, obviously, of saying, here's the work that we need you to accomplish it where you can do it best. And so we believe when you trust your employees and put in accountability measures and different things that you're able to successfully run an organization with people who are working at home, homeschooling their kids, and putting God first, then their family, and then their work. And so that's what we think should be ordered, how your life should be ordered, and that's how we want to operate our organization. So don't think that working from home is meaning that people are being lazy. If they're being lazy, it's because you haven't motivated them in a positive way. Hey, have you ever wanted to hear from Lee Bortons herself why she loves so many of these books? Well, you should consider joining her in her weekly book club called the Words Aptly Spoken Book Club. It's hosted every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, and each week's meeting centers around a discussion of a new book, including Classical Conversations exclusives, like selections from the Copper Lodge Library series, as well as literary classics like The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Mere Christianity. You do not have to read these books beforehand. You can join in without having read them and engage in thought-provoking conversation on the power held by words, ideas, and stories with other homeschoolers, parents, and lovers of books. Visit leebortons.com to find a live link to join the Words Aptly Spoken Book Club. That's leebortons.com, leghbortins.com. See you there.
Welcome to Classical Crypto with Will. Wow, we're having a wild week when it comes to cryptocurrency. Both Coinbase and Binance in lawsuits from the SEC. This has kind of been a shakedown of the crypto market. Things tanked hard kind of Monday, Tuesday, and have recovered. But what is going on? So many banks have gone down. There's so many lawsuits. Coinbase was suing SEC or is suing them. I think they started that lawsuit 2 months ago because there's no regulations or guidelines and they feel like the game's getting changed. Then Tuesday, the SEC comes out and sues Coinbase right after announcing that they're going to sue Binance. It's something else, but let's break it down and then we'll talk about a couple things and maybe some inconsistencies. But yeah, more blows to the cryptocurrency sector with two of its largest players getting sued this week. I'll just break it down again on the timeline. So Monday, the agency, meaning the SEC, filed charges against Binance. So that was Monday. Binance is the world's biggest exchange. And then the very next day, it accused Coinbase, the only publicly listed exchange in the US, of violating securities law. So this just gets crazy, just a left and then a right from Gary Gensler and the SEC. The SEC's chair, again, Gary Gensler, has long insisted that most crypto tokens are securities and therefore fall under his agency's, the SEC's, jurisdiction. Many digital asset enthusiasts, including some regulators and even lawmakers, are saying this time, Mr. Gensler has definitely overreached. There are notable similarities between this week's cases. The SEC accuses both Binance and Coinbase of operating security exchanges and selling digital assets and said that those securities, all those tokens, should have been registered. But they're all looking back, they're going retroactively, like there hasn't been a law, there hasn't been legislation. How can you sue us over this? Like we're suing you over no no regulation. Like, it really doesn't make sense, and it's very troubling, especially because Gensler, as far back as 2019, what is that, 4 years ago, he was an Algorand is a cryptocurrency. He was an enthusiast. He knew it inside and out. He was teaching blockchain, so teaching crypto at MIT. And he even called Binance and talked to CZ and said, hey, I would love to be an advisor for you guys there at Binance. And he turned it down. And I'm glad CZ did. I think he sees Gensler as a fox in the hen house and an individual who is not for decentralized currency, but one who is a big advocate for centralized currency. I'm reading into that a little bit, but I'm guessing that's why Gensler was shot down. But that was 2019. So he goes from saying, hey, I want to cozy up to you guys, I want to get a big paycheck and be an advisor, to, oh no, now we're suing you for likely millions and millions of dollars because you didn't register your tokens. So seems like hypocrisy to me, but let's keep going. The SEC is claiming that Coinbase has made billions of dollars facilitating the sale of crypto assets as an unregistered exchange and depriving investors of significant protections. The agency has argued that most crypto products are no different from stocks, bonds, or other securities, and that companies that are offering them must register them with the agency and making accompanying disclosures like any traditional exchange or brokerage. Coinbase and the SEC have been in a long public battle over the agency's stance on digital assets. Last year, Coinbase petitioned the SEC for new rules and regulations, just begging them for a framework so that something like this probably wouldn't happen. And then in April, Coinbase sued the SEC for failing to act on that petition. The company has been lobbying Congress and calling for legislation. Coinbase chief legal officer Paul Grewal testified before the House Agriculture Committee on Tuesday about a draft bill being released last week, which he said would make rules clear in practice, not just in theory. So what I'm seeing is that these exchanges, mostly Coinbase because they're national, they're here in the U.S., but I'm sure Binance as well, like, they're trying to get past the SEC now, going, hey, we're going to go to anyone. So in this case, they went to the House Agriculture Committee and said, hey, like, we want to submit a framework. I'm sure it'll go to Congress. They're putting a lot of pressure on Congress saying, hey, we want to know the boundaries. We want to know the game so that we can play the game. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, they're going, the SEC doesn't know its left hand from its right, so help us out. So I believe that Monday and Tuesday, with the SEC announcing these lawsuits, I believe that was their answer to these companies and Coinbase trying to go around them for legislation. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens with both of these cases. I will likely release another episode as a follow-up when we get a little bit more clarity what's happening. And again, there's another lawsuit, the one that's been happening with the Ripple XRP lawsuit in the SEC, that's hopefully coming to a close here soon. And actually that lawsuit should really kind of define and set a precedent for what is a registered token and what is not one. So we'll see what happens. But until the next episode, this has been Classical Crypto with Will. Have a blessed day.
Thank you for joining on this journey with a former merchant marine as we dug into Bitcoin mining, homeschooling, and starting a business while doing classical conversations. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with a friend. Please subscribe and rate this episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Refining Rhetoric with Robert Bortons. Want more? Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss an episode. You can also follow us on social media to continue the conversation, and visit classicalconversations.com/rhetoric to find out how you can join a local homeschool community.